Hey everybody, it's Monday night.
First of all, thank you all for being here as well. My name is Rachel Harrison. I'm the adult programming coordinator. Kathryn Kauffman. Miss Kathryn Kauffman, all the way from Lexington, joining us here tonight.
Welcome to Monday Night Live in Lexington, you guys. My name is Kathryn Kauffman, and I'm a psychic medium here in Lexington, Kentucky. This is my every Monday night show where we investigate what and who we are in life. We also go over a lot of paranormal topics, such as tonight's episode. Let's start off with some shout outs. Shout out to all these people over here on Instagram that have joined me. Let's do some shout outs on Facebook. Hey to Shauna, James, Trisha, Megan, Greta, Mindy. Hey to Corey Southworth up north. What's the weather like there? Are you cold? Are you getting warmed up with spring? Hey to Nancy, Melissa, Arthur Woosley, Richard. A special shout out to Melissa Begley and her sidekick, Miss Cleo. Big kisses to you guys. Shout out to Zoe, Chastity, Kathleen, and Linda. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you like these Monday night episodes, go ahead right now and hit that share button. It really helps me out a lot getting out the content to people. Share this also with people that you think might like the content. And yes, Melissa, Magical Monday indeed. And hey to Peggy Thompson. So tonight's episode, we're talking about the Undines, which are the water elementals. And so what I wanted to do for April is present each section of the elementals to you guys because they are so active during this time of year. We often see a lot of problematic, mischievous things that the elementals do during this season. And half of the reason why is when our hemisphere is in spring, there's a huge surge of energy. And I feel like the surge in energy and the awakening of these spirits just catalyzes them sometimes into mischievous behavior. Hey to Jessica, Karen, and Paula Marie. So we're looking at tonight the water elementals. Last week we talked about the earth elementals and specifically gnomes because gnomes were like the biggest problematic species. Hey to all you guys over here on Instagram, Static Kisses, Trina, and Maddie. Thanks for joining me. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments section. Hey to Regina Rice, and shout out to Hiromi Angel Medium. Thank you for joining me tonight, Hiromi. I would love to do a collaboration with you in Japan. That would be so much fun. So message me about that, and we'll see what we can get together. So the Undines, this is the water elements today. So the undine comes from the Latin root unda, which means wave. And these are the elementals or the energies and entities that are associated with water. Now, they're classically female, but we do see some references in folklore to male undines, specifically mermen. We often think of mermaids, but there are many, many legends of mermen. And it's under a group classification called the Merrow, M-E-R-R-O-W. So these are spirits that are bonded with and united with the water element. As in last week's episode, we took a look and kind of broke down the term of elemental into element, and the element is a part of something else. And these spirits are definitely bonded and united with the element that they are connected to. So these entities are bonded with water. Now, when we talk about the elementals, these are spirits that classically are very enchanting. They're very beautiful, but they have like some kind of tragic energy, in that once they lure a person in, can often be deadly and dangerous. And so that's kind of what we see in a lot of the folklore with these type of spirits. Now, there is part of folklore that says that the Undines were fabled to be wandering spirits of lovelorn women, or women who were spurned. And so the tears of these women went into the salty seas. But I would say the biggest portion of the folklore really is attributable to freshwater associations like rivers, ponds, streams. And so that's just a part of the folklore. But I do think it's just a story to try to explain who the mermaids are. So this goes back as far as Greek mythology. And Greek mythology specifically cites a clan of nymphs called Oceanides. And these are entities who claim the waters of the world as their home. And these beings were daughters of Titan, and the wife was Thetis. And their presence in the oceans were very legendary among seafarers and sailors. And they were really quite beneficial and would aid water travelers or seamen in navigation of ships and provide safe way through storms and that kind of thing. So we do see that, you know, there's positive connotations and there's negative ones as well. Let's do a shout out to Merlina, Karen, Robbie, Nicole, and a shout out to Sandra Buchanan Clemens and Jay Lynn Bland. Thanks for joining me. Hey, over here to Jay Gregory and Moon Mista on Instagram. And let's see, yeah, if you guys have any questions, try to drop them in the comments and I'll see about getting to them. So now legend has that most often people will notice that either a ripple or a wave will catch their eye for some reason. There will be something that's odd about the way the water is moving, and then the undine becomes apparent. Now, a lot of the folklore says that these type of spirits, and this goes pretty much for all of the fairy folk, because these are considered a sub-classification of fairy, or the Sidhe, S-I-D-H-E, say that these beings don't have a soul, and that the reason that they want to connect with or marry a human is to obtain a soul, and that any children that are born from a union of a fae folk, a she, a mermaid, and a human have a soul. Now, it doesn't ever say how the fairy gets the soul, just that that's what they want from humans. So I'm not sure that I agree with that, but it is prevalent in a lot of the folklore. So, and another thing that is very interesting is that a marriage with a mermaid or a fae folk actually shortens that entity's life. In other words, they almost become human, and then their life is shortened, in that they are sort of immortal before they marry a human, and once they do, then the lifespan is shortened. But because magically somehow once they marry a human, they have a soul. Don't know how that happens, but it is kind of interesting. Now, I did look at a lot of folklore over the years. This is one of the books that I have. I'll let you know what it is. It is The World Guide to Gnomes, Fairies, and Elves, and this was written by Thomas Knightley. And there are, it takes things and kind of breaks them down in between middle age and different areas of Brighton, Shetland, Scotland, Brighton, Britain. And to end today's episode, I'm going to read you a really scary story about nixies, which I thought was really cool. So nixies are basically male and female, and they inhabit lakes, rivers. And the thing that's different about nixies is they have really horrible green teeth. And they often will go into the towns to do shopping. And it's often said that nixies can be noticed because their part of their clothes will be wet. So people will notice that and be fearful, because then they know that that's a nixie that they're dealing with. Hey to Michelle, Dora, Tom Driver, and Ina. Thanks for joining me. If you guys are enjoying the Monday Night Live episodes, hit that share button and go ahead and share this out in your newsfeed for people. Kelpies were interesting because they were a type of Scottish water horse that classically were known to devour women and children. Now, a lot of these folklore stories were said to be derived to keep women and children away from dangerous water sources. But then as I got more deeper into the folklore of it, I found this story about Pyramid Lake, which is in the state of Nevada, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But that kind of made me sit back and go, there might be a little bit more to this than we think. But if a mermaid was married by a mortal man, he would often have a lot of challenges. Like, for instance, the Fae folk would say, you can take this wife, but only for a year and a day. And then she has to return to her family, to her other Fae folk. And so a lot of the offspring were left behind without the mother, because the mother was only allowed to stay for a year and a day. And that was kind of curious. I was thinking, why a year and 1 day? Why not just the year? So there has to be something to that. And if I find out, I'll let you know. But often one of the challenges to being married to a mermaid was that the mermaid would often act very unsociably. Like, for instance, a mermaid would laugh at a funeral or a cry at a wedding. It would be, the emotional reaction would be opposite what the human reaction would be. And so the husband would chastise the mermaid, and just even a little swat like that. The husbands were given 3 chances, and if they chastised their mermaid wife, by the 3rd incident, the wife would go back to their family in Fayland and leave the husband by themselves. And so that's kind of tragic too, because a lot of the children were supposedly left behind and that type of thing. Okay, so let's go on to water babies, because water babies were very, very dangerous. Hey to Dana and Connie Brock Powell, thanks for joining me. So the interesting thing about water babies and folklore for the She and the Fae folk in general is that every society on the planet, no matter how isolated the society is, has some kind of folklore or stories about small diminutive creatures that are connected to nature. And I found that very, very interesting, that no matter how isolated people and societies were, that they still had this folklore legends in their society. So water babies were often referred to by a lot of our Native American tribes, the Paiute. No, I'm not saying all these right. Shoshone, Washoe, Capano, Luceno, Serrano, Yokut, Salish, and Micmac. The Micmac called them, I think, halfway people. And so most of the Native American tribes referred to them as little people, and specifically water babies or water spirits. And there were a lot of dangerous associations with the water babies. And so water babies are mysterious and dangerous water spirits from the specifically folklore of California and Western Native tribes. And they were said to inhabit springs and sometimes ponds, streams, rivers. And they usually take the form of really beautiful female babies, female infants. Although some of the tribes refer to them as having fishtails or appearing like reptiles, which I thought was very interesting given, you know, the reptilian agenda that we all talk about these days. And that simply hearing the cries of a water baby in many tribal traditions means that it is an omen of death. And so what that's similar to is in Celtic countries, the cry or the wail of the banshee as she's combing her hair is an omen of death within the family or close association. And so now we have on the other side of the planet here a similar account, but it's the same thing: water element, water baby, the crying, portending an omen of death. So I find that that's really interesting that different societies are coming up with similarities as close as this. Also, they have a lot of legends in the Washoe stories about water babies, in that picking up a water baby or even touching the water baby causes great catastrophes, not only for the person who touches it, but everybody that they're associated with. And so hearing a water baby cry was a big, huge event that, you know, was to be avoided at all costs. And that's going to lead me into this story about Pyramid Lake in the state of Nevada. Okay, so again, they say that these fables were told to keep kids away from the water, but here's the thing about it, is that Pyramid Lake, every springtime, and it's only in the springtime that these cries are heard from the water babies, and a lot of people go missing, but only in the springtime, which I'm telling you, springtime and all of these folklore accounts is really big for things happening with the She, with the Fae, with the water people. So the thing about Pyramid Lake is that some places in Pyramid Lake are up to 350 feet deep. And it also gets its name from these really weird, unusual pyramid shaped rocks that just kind of jut out of the water. And if you get a chance to look up Pyramid Lake on the internet and look at a picture of it, it's really, it feels really creepy to me. So I urge you to just grab a picture of it and just look at it. But every year they have a number of bizarre, unexplainable events, especially during springtime, that include people recounting cries of babies, lots of cries of babies, and then fishermen will go missing every spring and never return home. So they have a lot of missing people on Pyramid Lake, and a lot of haunted type of sounds that people are reporting. Now, the legend of the water babies for Pyramid Lake begins with the Paiute tribe, who said, now this is just in the folklore, so I don't recount it as being real in the sense, but the folklore is that the tribe were said to have thrown malformed or premature babies into the dark, murky waters to drown them in an effort to keep the tribe lineage strong. And so they only kept the children who would be able to grow into capable, useful members of the tribe. And so the stories are that the shrieks and the cries of the baby are the ghosts and the spirits of the drowned children from this particular tribe. So we don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but it, you know, because a lot of folklore is kind of created to try to explain the phenomena. So there may have been the phenomena there, and then this story got derived to try to explain what people were hearing. So Georgia Smith says, very interesting. Yes, it is very interesting. Hey to Bob and Sean and Mammy. Hey, Mammy, how are you? Margaret, Sharon, and Susan. Let me check for questions. Dana says, happy Monday. Yeah, it's a happy Monday here, even though it was rainy all day and cold. And you see down in the studio, I've got my sweater on still. Be glad to pack these things away in the closet when it's time. Here's an interesting story. The Ute Indians told a story of a mysterious race of dwarves who lived in the lake, and they referred to those people as water babies because of their clever tactics in luring people to their deaths. They would make sounds very reminiscent of crying babies, and so the concerned people would take off to the lake in an effort to locate and rescue the endangered babies, only to be dragged down to the depths by the nefarious water babies, or this race of dwarves who dwelled in the lake. So I found that that was very interesting. Now, you know how we talk about Nessie over in the UK? Well, I found this story and I thought this was really, really cool. A huge predatory, man-hating monster also calls Utah Lake home. The first sighting by a European occurred just at the tail end of Civil War when a resident reported being chased to the shore by a 30-foot reptile. I didn't know we had one on this hemisphere, which then turned around and joined another huge beast and swam off. Shortly after, a different man claimed to see a huge reptile with the head of a dog. Interesting. Patrolling the waters of the lake. And this was in 1870. Some fishermen found a large, strange skull that had tusks protruding from it in the water. Now, sightings have occurred all the way up to 1920, and in 1920, the sightings stopped. But there's a lot of folklore about these water type of elements. Let's see. Hey to Jackie Space, Janice, and Christine. Thanks for joining me tonight. Now, again, if you guys want to see any past episodes on any of these topics that we've gone over, all of these episodes are put onto my YouTube channel, and you can go back and watch any of the past episodes that you want. There's episodes on black-eyed children, ghosts and spirits, doppelgangers, all kinds of stuff. And I'll drop a link in the comment section to the YouTube channel after the show so that you guys can go and just peruse through all of the shows. Now, I'm going to leave you guys with this story about nixies. Nixies were the male and female elementals that I was talking about a little bit earlier, the ones with the green teeth. So it was often said that to see a nixie portended somebody who was going to be drowned shortly thereafter, and that the nixies were often seen dancing on the surface of the water, and that was sort of an omen of death of somebody who was going to drown. Now, this leads me to a folklore story from my family. It's not really folklore. I mean, it is real that the person passed away, but I don't know about the story that's attached to it. This is what was told to me by my mother. And what she was talking about was that there was a pond, I think down the road or close to where my mother's parents lived. It was called Pease Pond, P-A-S-E or P-A-S. And that was the name of the people that owned the property. And her brother, my mother's brother, who passed away, I think when he was 16 or 17, he actually drowned in that pond. Now, the weird folklore part of it was that it was known that the community, there was a new hearse that was bought for the community, and that Joe Tom, that was his name, Joe Tom Puckett, said, I wonder who's going to be the first person to ride in the hearse. And it was him. Pretty freaky. So, and that made me think, when the Nixies portend to drowning, it made me think of this incident with Joe Tom. So let me get to the real creepy story I want to leave you guys with. So a waterman, and that's meaning the Nixie, a waterman, once lived on good terms with a peasant who dwelt not far from the lake. He often visited him and at last begged that the peasant would come into his house under the water. Okay, the peasant consented and went down with him. There was everything down under the water in a stately place on the land, halls, chambers, and cabinets with costly furniture of every description. The waterman, or Nixie, led his guests over the whole place and showed him everything that was in it. They came at length to a little chamber where standing several new pots turned upside down. The peasant asked, what's in these pots? Why are all these pots here? And the Nixie, or the waterman, told him they contained the souls of drowned people, which I put under the pots to keep them close so they cannot get away. The peasant made no remark, smart move, and he came up again on the land. But for a long time, the affair of the souls continued to give him great trouble in his mind, and he watched to find when the waterman should go from the home or be away from the home. When this occurred, as he marked the right way down to the home and under the water, he descended into the water house, and having made out the little chamber, he remembered the chamber where the pots were. He went in and turned up all the pots one after another, and immediately the souls of the drowned people ascended out of the water and recovered their liberty. The end. It is such a good book, you guys. Thomas Knightley, The World Guide to Gnomes, Fairies, Elves, and Other Little People. And you should be able to get this off of Amazon. It's really got a lot of really old excerpts from different books. Dwarves, trolls, changelings, mermaids, brownies, leprechauns, and the list goes on and on. And they're just really good accounts of way back when. And tonight, we're going to see if David will come down and tell us what's for dinner. I don't know. He's in the thick of it. So if he doesn't get a chance to come down, I will have to tell you myself. But nope, I hear him coming. What are we having for dinner, David?
What are we having tonight for dinner indeed?
What are we having, David?
We are having some homemade, let me get it, roasted red duck Thai curry.
That sounds interesting. Where did you get that idea?
We went to Tyler's Asian Market over on New Circle Road, and I saw that they had duck quarters, and I got some of those.
And they looked really good.
Roasted that in the oven this evening, and I'm now putting in the vegetables with the red curry, and going to toss that all together and heat it up and get it just a little tender. Not much. Don't want to overcook those vegetables. And then I'll throw the duck meat in.
That sounds good.
Some rice.
Yay! Thank you.
You are welcome. Bye.
Thanks, guys, for joining me. Next week is going to be the sylphs, and the sylphs are the air element. So we will go over what the sylphs do. They're not as popular as the undines and the earth element. So next week is sylphs, and then the last week will be the salamanders, which are one of my favorites. So Ina wants to ask a question. Have you seen any of these creatures? Yes, absolutely, Ina, I have. If a person has developed clairvoyant and clairsentient abilities, you definitely can see them. They exist, all of these creatures exist at a different resonant frequency than ours. And if you are able to alter your resonant frequency and perception, you definitely can see them and they can see you. Sometimes it's not a good thing to see them because you know something's up, and especially this time of year, a lot of people will call me and tell me, look, I'm having trouble with something tormenting my animals and causing havoc outside. And, you know, I'll have to go out and see about what we can do to deal with it. Now, if any of you guys are having trouble with these elementals at this time of year, remember in episode 1 about the gnomes that these spirits answer to the archangels. And so if you are having problems, you can go to my Pinterest board for archangel symbols and feel free to grab any of those symbols that you want off of there and kind of use them in and around your home to control some of these spirits. Now, I think it was on episode 1 we went over which archangel was over which element. So go back and watch that other episode to find out which archangel you need to use the symbols from in order to control what's there, what's causing havoc at your property. Until next Monday night, I will hope that your week is great and you have some sunshine later on this week and you get to get out in the yard and play in the dirt and plant some stuff, or just go for a walk and clear your mind and just have a great spring. And for those of you guys on the other side of the planet where fall and winter is beginning, enjoy that season too. If it's getting cold, grab a nice big cozy cashmere sweater and wrap up by the fire with a hot cup of tea. And I'll see you next Monday. Kisses from Kentucky, guys. See you next week.